What's up, everybody? Okay, so I'm recording more of these videos. I'm just letting it flow, letting it go. Not worried about whether it's perfect, but I think my plan is working with all of this in that I'm slowly becoming more comfortable and confident, and these videos seem to improve. I feel like my messaging is really strong, and it's only getting better. And I have a lot on my mind that I wanted to talk about here. Not as a form of therapy, although I guess maybe you could say getting stuff off your chest makes you feel better, but when you're a thoughtful person, you sometimes have a lot to say. But where to begin? You might have heard in the news that Joanne Fabrics, I think they're closing stores. I hope they're not going out of business. My mother's name is Joanne. My mother passed away 3 years ago, but I still think of her in the present tense. And in fact, it's even spelled the same way without the E at the end. And I bring this up now because I had a mini synchronicity a couple minutes ago. I'm in Glendale, sunny Glendale, California. So anyway, I just kind of passed by and I said, you know what? I think this is all happening for a reason. And the thing about it is, when you have regrets, or when you say or think, you don't have to talk about it with anybody if you don't want to, but sometimes you should. Sometimes you need to break the rules. When they say, oh, that's only something you would say to a therapist, well, break those rules, because we all need friends. We all need people we can confide in. And the thing about regrets, it doesn't mean that we caused whatever went wrong. It doesn't mean that we're responsible for whatever happened or whatever we wanted to happen that couldn't or wouldn't. It simply means that there is an incredible sadness, but also, I guess you would say, a sense of knowing that you wish and you wanted something to turn out differently than it did. And of course I loved my mother. But my mother and I did not have the greatest relationship and grew more and more distant over time. And it's a very paradoxical thing that my mother was both a terrible mother and a great mother at the same time. Maybe I would just say a terrible mother and a good mother at the same time. And without getting too maudlin about it, because my goal is not to depress anybody, but it's not easy. I guess I'll leave that with, there was a movie that I saw last year. I don't remember what it was called. Hilary Swank was in it. And I don't remember what it was in the movie that reminded me of my mother, but I just started bawling and bawling and bawling at the end. So, anyway. There's this guy I met on Facebook because, no, let me rephrase that. Going back and looking at my old videos, there's probably too many ums and too many sentence fragments and too many efforts to make everything spontaneous and fun and such. Okay? But still, it's okay. It's all right. We make mistakes. We say sometimes. We sometimes have to talk through the stuff that we're saying. That's perfectly normal. I'm going to turn this way. There's a lot of weird people in Glendale. Everybody actually is weird in Glendale. So anyway, I met this guy on Facebook. I didn't meet him in person. I met him on a group page for filmmaking because one of my New Year's resolutions is to make my first film, self-funded, micro-budget. And so I started putting some feelers out there on Facebook and different social media channels. And I feel good about it. I'll find the right group of people. I need at most 10 people, if that. The most important thing is having 2 actors. But the older I get, I'm going to phrase that differently. The wiser I get, the more experienced in life I become. I learn more and more to trust my gut instinct. And the reality is when you get a weird vibe from somebody, you got to trust it. I've learned that. And I can say that without hesitation because I no longer fear that someone is going to react that way towards me, which I think is part of why it's been so hard in the past to trust my instinct about things like that and to get out of relationships with people that are not helping me. When it comes to regrets in terms of friendships, there's several that I also have regrets. Anyway, it's sad because the time really is short. And I don't want to be left behind. And my goal with this channel, even though I talk a lot about spirituality, isn't to preach to anybody, isn't to proselytize anybody. In fact, I encourage, as part of my soul tribe, everybody, a diversity of beliefs. And that certainly includes atheism. I mean, I don't want to give the impression that I'm like a frou-frou liberal because I'm not. But still, I do believe that we're stronger when intellectual inquiry is encouraged. And I think if Jesus were around today, he'd agree with me. I think that's part of what made him such a great guy. But what's sad is when you feel a connection with somebody at first, and then they do something weird where it's very obvious that this is probably not somebody you want to get involved with. It's sad because you see... what's the best way to put this? Well, to say what I think, you see the face of God in everybody. Because we are all God's children. And we all have worth. And it's sad when you see others that always undervalue themselves. I can't tell you how many people I've known. I can't tell you how many people that are currently somewhere in my orbit of experience that I say the same thing about. Fortunately, I have a few people that understand what I'm talking about and do absolutely have a sense of their own worth. All I'm saying is that it is sad because the time is short and people are going to be left behind. And I say that without any sort of judgment or malice. I don't want to see that happen to people. I have no intention of being left behind personally, but that's all you can do is preach. No, you can preach. You can call it preaching, right? No, let's not call it that. Let's not get confused about it. Just gotta tell people the truth. Doesn't matter what you believe. Just tell people the truth. That's all you can do. Even though I do resist evil. And there are forms of passive resistance that are positive and affect change in a way that is peaceful and is truly coming from a place of love, but is also coming from a place of understanding the need for law and order. And it's unfortunate that those same tactics often become associated with terrorism. And so I say that also kind of acknowledging that people with unpopular opinions are often branded crazy. People who are outliers are often branded crazy. I wish it wasn't like that, but when it's something that I think is important, like the sanctity of human life, go ahead and call me crazy, I don't care. And it's just sad, but it is sad. And I'm not trying to minimize anything like that. And that's why I do have friends, and I do have people that love me, and I have people that I care about, but I miss having somebody to talk to. And I am putting feelers out there for that, because there's got to be at least one person out there that wouldn't mind hanging out with me, going for walks, going to the movies, etc. And but it's tough, like I said, because too many people, it's heartbreaking to me, that don't understand their worth, and they seem almost determined to devalue themselves. So anyway, but something that I have been able to articulate, and I think that this is a major step towards ascension. This is that type of realization. It's that type of epiphany, I think. I don't like using that word because it's kind of an ambiguous word. But to really make sense of what we mean by the ego. Because the reality is, to put that in my own words, the ego is a part of us. The ego is a part of our shadow self. And the ego is the cause of all suffering. And it's also the cause of depression. Because the ego is that part of ourselves that has rage, not anger. Rage, there's a difference. The ego is the envious part of our personality. The ego is the one that gets jealous. The ego is the one who is constantly raveled up in FOMO, fear of missing out. And the other man's grass is always greener. Oh, here I'm passing by Joanne Fabrics again. I don't know if you guys can see that. Anyway, it's that feeling that the ego, maybe through no fault of its own, seeks to, or has, let me rephrase that. Probably not intentionally, but the ego invades our psyche with that feeling and does it in a way that we can't see it without practicing some form of meditation and spiritual exploration. And that isn't to say that that journey is the same for everybody. If you learned all of this 20 years ago before I did, that's fine. There's stuff that I learned 20 years ago before a lot of other people did. So it's life. That's what makes life beautiful. And so I've now gotten to the point where when I feel myself slipping into some kind of depression or some kind of suffering, I catch it immediately because I know that that's the ego talking. because the ego invades our psyche with a snapshot of everything it thinks we're missing out on. But that snapshot is always a distortion. And that's why the death of the ego is so important. So I'm going to leave it at that, because a lot of this, I think there's a more academic discussion that I would like to explore with all of this. But I'm going to table that because that requires a lot of research. So I don't want to open up anything that it's going to take a long time to sort through. But as I've said, I am a Christian, and if you're not, that's okay. But I am. And I think Jesus is as much a spiritual master as Buddha or anyone else that we revere. All you have to do is believe. You can do more, right? Going back to resisting evil, you don't have to resist evil. You can just renounce it. You can just look at it and say, this is not me, and walk away. You can do that. Sometimes even the best of us have no choice but to do that. But all you have to do is believe. That really is all you have to do. So, I think that covers it for now. I feel good, honestly, because now I see what is possible for the upcoming year. So I'm going to leave it at that and continue to record these videos, continue to develop this channel and develop an audience. Eventually have my message refined to the point where it's marketable to a wide audience. All right, thank you, everybody.